To you all. It's great to see some familiar faces here in the room, and absolutely delighted that we've got such a fantastic online registration today. I think our numbers are exceeding 300, which is just superb. So thank you all. So this session this afternoon has been hosted by Highlands and Islands Enterprise and Wave Energy Scotland. I'm delighted to take this to you today, and really we want to say thank you to all those that are participating and contributing. I've got quite a few housekeeping things to do here, and hopefully I won't miss any of them out, but somebody will prompt me, I'm sure, if I have. First of all, of course, I probably should say my name is Audrey McKeever. I'm Director of Energy Transition and Net Zero at Highlands and Islands Enterprise. The event is being recorded today, and we'd like to recommend that you use the Test and Protect app for track and trace. Face coverings are mandatory. When moving around the building. I think we would like to encourage you to use it while seating, but particularly when moving around the building, they're mandatory. There's no planned fire alarms, so if that does go off, I believe the fire exits are to my right and out that direction too. So please wear your event badge at all times. If you leave the Lighthouse building, you will need this for ID to re-enter. And the toilets are on the floor above and the floor below, but hopefully you'll have found that out by now. What we're going to suggest today is, rather than wait to a break in proceedings to go to to relieve yourselves, please just go as and when you're ready, because we don't really want congestion at the toilets in the break time. Please can you have your mobile devices on silent, but do keep them with you, because we're wanting to use the Slido app to encourage questions throughout the Q&A sessions. In terms of Slido, I made the mistake earlier today of just assuming that everybody knew what Slido was, but I'm hoping you're familiar with it. So it's www.sli.do. The event passcode for today is #566191. There's a poll already on Slido, so we'd like you to take part on, both in the room here today and online. So please do fill that out, and we'd also like to know, particularly online, where you're coming from in terms of your interest, because I think that's really key to us in terms of how we do progress the marine energy sector. So why marine energy? Why is that important to Highlands and Islands Enterprise? Well, we've been a strong advocate and champion of marine energy for a long time, and we will continue to do so. Not only because of what marine energy can and does do for our region, the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, but also for the Scottish economy, but also, as we're all too acutely aware, and particularly really heightened in our awareness just now with COP26, is the challenges of those economies that are really at the forefront of climate change, and in terms of potential impact. And many of those island economies in particular, I believe our marine energy technologies will be a really strong part of the solution to their challenges. So our region, I argue, would suggest is the natural home of marine energy, and we are delighted to be able to share with you via our fantastic speakers today some of the exciting developments that are underway. First up this afternoon, we have a short video message to share with you from Michael Madison, Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero Energy and Transport. He regrets that he can't be with us here today. I'm sure you'll appreciate a really busy diary over the next couple of weeks, but he has taken the time to do a recorded piece for us. And once we've heard from the Cabinet Secretary, I'll be passing over to Claire Mack, known to many of you, Chief Executive of Scottish Renewables, and Claire's going to guide us through the first part of the session today. I really do hope you enjoy this session. I hope you leave it, physically and virtually, as motivated and as committed as we are at Highlands and Islands Enterprise and Wave Energy Scotland to really advancing the marine energy industry. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Glasgow. To those of you here today in person, and also to those of you who are tuning in from further afield. I'm very pleased to open this event, which takes place during COP26, showcasing marine energy in Scotland and the role the sector can have in meeting net zero. Scotland is a world leader in marine renewable energy as a result of more than a decade of support from the Scottish Government, together with the expertise, investment and innovation of the industry itself. We continue to champion the marine energy sector, supporting the research, development, innovation and demonstration that will maintain Scotland's competitive advantage. Wave and tidal energy can not only play an important role in Scotland's future energy system, but could offer economic opportunities, including export potential, and can be part of Scotland's response to the global climate emergency. We are proud to be home to a number of the world's leading tidal energy projects, including Nova Innovations' On Fay project in Blue Mull Sound, Maygen in the Pentland Firth, and Orbital Marine Power's O2 project at the European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney. The European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney continues to be a global centre of excellence for marine renewables and has tested more wave and tidal devices than any other site in the world. In wave energy, we have provided over £50 million of investment to date through our internationally recognised Wave Energy Scotland programme, which is now entering the Real Sea demonstration phase. I'm sure you will hear more about some of these remarkable projects and programmes throughout this afternoon's session, and I hope you enjoy the discussions.
So, good afternoon everybody, and really great to have an introduction obviously from the Cabinet Secretary there, and we at Scottish Renewables were really pleased to see the brief of net zero elevated up to Cabinet Secretary level. We think it's really, really important, and also important for a technology like wave and tidal to be able to bring that to the attention of somebody so senior on a regular basis. So, as you can see from the slides, my name is Claire Mack. I'm Chief Executive of Scottish Renewables, and we are the trade association for the renewable energy industry here in Scotland, covering all of the technologies that we have the benefit of here in Scotland, and very much focused on the development of wave and tidal as we go forward as one of our newer renewable technologies within the brief. So this session in Scotland's Climate Ambition Zone is a real pleasure for me to be able to introduce. We're looking at Scotland's story. And of course, you know, the words world leadership are being bandied about a lot just now, because it's very much what COP is all about, and it's something that we're very proud of in the renewable sector. And of course, as we work with Highlands and Islands Enterprise very, very often on the wave and tidal brief, it's something that we talk about a lot, is how we maintain that world leadership status, because it's very important to us. It's something that we're incredibly proud of and something that we're keen to protect. And we've started to see some movement, obviously, from UK government. I started in this role 4 years ago. And we were having some very difficult conversations at that point in time with UK government, which have changed. I accept that we've probably not got everything that we would want in the toolkit at this moment in time, but certainly to have seen recognition within the Contracts for Difference mechanism, for example, that wave and tidal, tidal more specifically, and wave in the future will have a place, was really pleasing to see, and really keen to build on that at a Scottish level, and working very hard with the industry just now through the Scottish Marine Energy Industry Leadership Group in order to do that, to come up with solutions that will help us make those stepping stones to help introduce wave and tidal into the UK's energy mix through the kind of standard mechanisms that we're aware of. So we're also releasing a paper at Scottish Renewables on Energy Day, which is this Thursday, which will outline our kind of key legacy COP ask for wave and tidal. So COP is a wonderful celebration for us for 2 weeks, and it's a wonderful period of negotiation, which will ultimately have, you know, world-changing status, and that's what we're all waiting to hear about. But for us at Scottish Renewables, really keen that we manage to use the opportunity to land some legacy asks, some things that we feel would would set us up for the next decade and beyond. And one of those is very much solidifying wave and tidal within our energy mix and thinking of ways in which we can do this. Because we want to be the country that develops and deploys literally all sources of renewable energy, with wave and tidal very much part of that mix, and very keen to see that continue. So it's not just about generation, and probably what you'll see is me iterate this same point in the film that you're about to see, but it's one of the things I feel very, very strongly about wave and tidal, because I get asked the question a lot, why wave and tidal? You know, it's expensive. We've got lots of offshore wind, we've got floating offshore wind, we can make this work, getting very big bang for buck. And I think that that's what's very different here, is that it's not just about generation, and it's not just a clutch of projects that we've got here in Scotland. We've got a whole heap of environmental intelligence and data coming through from this sector. We've got the opportunity for manufacturing and supply chain, which we're already developing and growing. We've got technological development in incredibly challenging circumstances, which again is something that could be used the world over. It's relevant and exportable. Planning and a consulting framework, a planning and consenting framework, that is in a regulatory framework that is well set up to deal with this. This is something that we know is an asset, and we heard was an asset in other panels that I've been on this last week or so. We've got academic centres and research capability, which also can support the development of this sector, as well as innovation infrastructure through EMEC and WES, that we're all aware of and will no doubt hear more about as part of this session. So what is it that we want for wave and tidal? We just essentially want that same opportunity that other technologies have had, which is to demonstrate their ability to reduce costs and their ability to integrate themselves within a broader energy mix, which is more resilient and stable and healthier for us as a planet. If you look at the IEA report, the Net Zero by 2050 report, it talks a lot about the need for half of our carbon emissions reductions to come between 2030 and 2050 from new technologies. And that's where wave and tidal is really uniquely placed, is to help meet that challenge. We're about to see a decade of innovation. Everybody agrees on that, which is the way to accelerate and to get to where we need to meet net zero is going to require a decade of action and innovation and to come. And that's where I firmly believe that wave and tidal will start to make its mark. And there is in this next decade as we start to develop and deploy at a rate that will probably astonish people in the same way that offshore wind has astonished people in the last 5 to 10 years as well. And that's very much my ambition for today in Scotland's climate ambition zone, is that's where we will end up. So I'm really keen to be able to introduce the film that you're about to see now, but also my panel who I'll introduce individually as we go. Just in case you missed the Slido code, because I had to scribble it down very quickly, it is 566191. That's 566191 if you want to ask any questions on Slido. I'll now let you watch the film. Thank you.
Scotland's renewable sector is now 3 times bigger than it was in 2009. Wave and tidal energy is still only a small part of this, but it's growing as technology is developed and tested in Scotland's waters, and it's been estimated that it could ultimately provide 20% of the UK's current electricity requirements.
For us here in Scotland, it's not just about 1 or 2 projects or pilots. What we've got here in Scotland is an actual ecosystem that is growing here. So we've got a planning and consenting system that's able to bring forward these wave and tidal projects. We've also got world-leading test and development facilities to help us grow these projects and to create even more potential for those. But we also have a supply chain which is growing.
We issue leases and licences for activities that happen offshore. One of the important things that we do is engage with the sector. So marine energy in particular, they have had 10 years or so of development. And it's important that when we are issuing them with seabed agreements, that we do that in a way that doesn't block them or limit them from their development activities. So that means developers can come to us when they're ready to apply. They're not waiting on a leasing round or driven by certain timescales that are outside their control.
Given the impressive figures for renewables generation from both onshore and offshore wind and even hydro schemes, it isn't unreasonable to ask why we need wave and tidal developments.
It's predictable because I can tell you 20 years or 2,000 years from now at 3:30 on a Tuesday how much tide will be flowing through that channel, because it's all based on the relative positions and orientations of the planets.
The good thing about wave power is that the energy is effectively stored by the sea. Not for long, but for a reasonable period, which means that whereas you'll get a storm coming through and the wind turbines will produce a lot of power, the wave machines will continue to produce power as the seas continue to roll past for 24 or 48 hours after the wind has passed. So you get a better distribution of power.
The Maiden Array is located in the inner sound of the Pennon of Firth between Stroma and the mainland of Scotland. It's probably the best location in the UK for tidal resource. It's the water swapping from the North Sea to the Atlantic and back again, and it's squeezed through that inner sound, and it really accelerates its flow, and that's where we can maximise the energy that we extract.
As a country, Scotland is incredibly well positioned to take advantage of marine energy. At the European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney, more ocean energy converters have been tested than anywhere else in the world. The expertise which has been developed at EMEC is matched by the incredible natural resources which provide ideal conditions for testing and generating wave and tidal energy.
So we have really strong resources here, both waves and tides. We get the full force of the Atlantic Ocean crashing against our shores, as you can see behind me today. And for tides, because Orkney is an archipelago, the islands concentrate the flow of the tides as they flow through the islands, and that happens every 6 hours.
There's also world-class facilities like the Flow Wave Ocean Energy Research Facility in Edinburgh, which gives developers the opportunity to test small-scale devices at the proof-of-concept stage before moving on to larger-scale trials at EMEC.
We started with some very small models and some smaller tanks, but some of our first most significant testing was here in FlowWave, and we've tested in FlowWave numerous times, and wave tank testing is a really important part of developing technologies and de-risking it before you move to larger scales and start building ocean-going prototypes.
Another key strength which makes this the ideal place to develop wave and tidal energy devices is the well-developed infrastructure. Due in part to the legacy of the oil and gas industry, we have a supply chain which has shown its ability to adapt legacy skills to the marine energy sector.
In the early days, developers used to come to Orkney and they used to tell us what they needed. Developers come to us now and we tell them how to do it, and even in the early days when they're building the device, how we can make it easier for the installation and for the recovery of their equipment.
We build items, composite items that get shipped all over the world, but the one theme that's been going all the way through that we've been doing for the last 20 years is in marine renewables. And we started off 20 years ago doing the Palamas first seagoing prototypes. And we're seeing the results now of where finally we're seeing the numbers starting to increase. And hopefully in the future they're going to increase even more.
Well, I like to think we're a global leader, and it just comes naturally, so we live and breathe it. And we've got a hunger for it to see the development of all these different devices being a success.
And then there's our range of ports and harbours, with the expertise and facilities which are a prerequisite for accessing wave and tidal sites. For a country the size of Scotland, the resources to make marine energy a significant contributor to the renewable sector are abundant. Whether it's the natural marine environment, the infrastructure to support innovation, or the supply chain to help transform plans into reality, it amounts to an unbeatable package for the sector.
We're in a climate emergency, and if we want to get to net zero, we need all the renewables we can get our hands on.
And what we're going to see around the world is that it's coastal communities and island communities that are going to be impacted hardest and first by climate change. And that's why what happens here in Scotland and here in Orkney is tremendously important.
We're looking at projects around the world, really. So, you know, we could take the Scottish technology that we've made, built and designed in Scotland and put it all around the world.
We've shown that the technology works, and now we need to commercialise it. over the next, say, 5 years. And we're looking at having viable commercial technology by about 2030.
If someone tells us they want a 10 megawatt wave farm offshore in 5 years' time, we get the engineers together and we deliver it, because that's what engineers do. Give engineers a challenge, they'll solve it.
Wonderful. Back to me again. So, we now do have our panel of speakers. I'm going to invite them up to come and address you as part of this event. So I have got developer presentations coming from Orbital Marine Power, from CIMIC Atlantis, Sustainable Marine Energy, Motion Energy and AWS. Can I invite, I think you're all sitting on this table, can I invite you all up please to come and give us your presentations? So, I went to grab my phone there because we've got an incredibly tight schedule here of speed updates, I believe. I think everybody has, as I understand it, 4 minutes to give us a quick update on their projects and to help us understand a bit more about Scotland's story. And in the planning for this event, we all recognised, Andrew, in that you going first was going to be a great challenge to keep you to 4 minutes. So setting the alarm, and you can't eat everyone else's sandwiches. You've got to stick to the 4 minutes.
So I am going first.
You are going first, indeed. Oh, Norma's got the bell. Actually, that's what we discussed as well, was having a bell. So you will be told. Just time to stop. But great to hear from you.
That's okay. Quite happy to set the performance standard here. Keep 4 minutes. Are we on? Or just... So, good afternoon. I think hopefully there's a much bigger online audience, but we've got very short time, so please, we've got a huge amount of really interesting visual assets and information online on our various different social media streams, so please check that out. Orbital, it's great here at COP26 to have the platform to present, that we think that tidal stream energy has a complementary role to play in the just transition to net zero by delivering clean, predictable power, and that we have a role to play in helping turn the tide on climate change. So, we are a technology development company based here in Scotland. We're actually headquartered in Orkney, which is something of the heart of tidal stream energy, phenomenal resource up there. We've been developing our technology for 15 years now, well, for over 15 years, so that's been a process that we've taken consistently our shareholders along on in delivering world-first projects. And that's, we've got quite an innovative, pioneering vision for the technology that's rooted in an understanding of trying to minimise construction cost and construction risk, and indeed minimise operational cost and operational risk. It's only by doing that and being able to present a de-risk proposition that we can not only attract commercial investment into the space, but we can manage those risk profiles in early projects. So that's rooted in an understanding of operational risk, and actually it generates a very interesting vision for the technology, which is a floating one. So probably about 15, 20 years ago when we started in this, we might have been sniggered at and laughed at. But as I said, over 15 years, we've delivered flagship projects that have probably turned some preconceptions around what the technology needs to look at. Being floating, it's highly accessible. It's anchored on site, so we minimize construction risks down to fairly familiarized procedures of anchors, chains, installation, and cables. And the turbine is manufactured much similarly, actually, to shipbuilding in controllable, managed spaces of shipyards and factories, and it can be towed readily with low-cost vessels. And of course, we can access the turbine very quickly and easily with low-cost vessels. You can see the technology really is main hull section, and then it's got retractable legs, what we call, and at the end of there we've got 2 power generators. And the legs are actuated with a hydraulic system that brings them up to the surface so that we can get at low-cost access to all major components and systems. As I said, this is a technology that's been refined and optimized through 15 years. We were the first company in the world to grid connect a floating tidal stream turbine with a 250 kilowatt machine back in 2010, so a decade ago, at the European Marine Energy Centre. In 2015, we delivered a 2 megawatt prototype system that again was grid connected and very successfully operated and really demonstrated the conceptual benefits of floating tidal stream energy in 2015-16 in European Marine Energy Centre again in Orkney. The system that you see now here in front of you is what we propose as our commercial demonstrator. This is the O2 turbine, and we recently finished the construction. It was launched this year. It was the first vessel to be launched out of a Dundee shipyard in 40 years with over 80% of UK content. And we think it presents not just a strikingly bold, innovative vision for the sector, but a step change in cost. I think I pretty much can finish there, other than just to give you some visuals as to what this looks like in real life. So this is the world's most powerful tidal turbine in operation, with 2 1-megawatt drivetrains that can put out more than 2 megawatts of clean, predictable power from 20-metre rotor diameters. So we have over 600 square metres of swept area capturing the clean resource. So I think that's us.
Yep, within tolerance, definitely. Thank you, Andrew. So, yep, you're used to the 4-minute investor's pitch, I think. So, Graham Reid, Simon Atlantis Energy, you are up next. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. Huh?
Absolutely.
Shows you how quickly 4 minutes can go. So we've been on a journey, as of most developers, and we couldn't be where we are today without huge support from our stakeholders, which Scottish Government is one of the most important to us. One of the highlights of our business is our Maygen project, and as you can see, beautiful vista, the Pentland Firth, and the exciting thing is for us that you can't see anything. So we've got under the water there, in this location approximately, we've got 6 megawatts of generating capacity with 4 1.5 megawatt turbines. One of them was built in Scotland, and all the work obviously was carried out here. We've delivered to date approximately 40 gigawatt hours of power since generation started in 2017. And in addition, we've got some other projects, demonstration projects, one in Ras Blanchard, which is near the island of Alderney, one of the Channel Islands, and a project in Japan as well. But the real prize for us is Maygen 2. And what you see there is what you're going to see if we can get Maygen 2 away. Maygen 2 potentially for us is approximately an additional 80 megawatts, with consenting for another approximate 300 megawatts as well, all in that area that you can see. Key for us is the government view on AR4, and that we hope will really help the industry. The industry has 124 megawatts ready to go now, but we need government support to get that constructed. And I was very pleased to read an academic report that was published a few weeks ago, stating that the UK can provide 11.5 gigawatts of power by 2031 around various parts of the country. And their view was that we can drive down the LCOE from where it is now at about 240 to way below that, about 140, where it will actually be competitive with other forms of renewable energy, such as well, not renewable, but other forms of low carbon, such as CCGT and anaerobic digestion. So I think it's all to play for. We're headquartered in Scotland, and we're super excited about the future. And thanks, and I'll hand you over to Jason Heyman.
Thank you. We're super excited too. Jason, if you go.
Right. Good afternoon. So I'm Jason Heyman, I'm the CEO of Sustainable Marine Energy. Yeah, so you can see there, we're also in the floating tidal business, and we're in the business of delivering sustainable energy projects in the wider blue economy. So we do that, really, our mission is to power island and coastal communities. This has been quite a common theme of discussion here in the last little while, and to energize the blue economy using renewable and sustainable power. We do this really in three ways. One is with our in-stream tidal energy systems. These are floating platforms that provide reliable and predictable clean power. We also have another product range which is in anchors for harsh environments that we've obviously had to develop to be able to hold our devices in place within tidal streams, and also project development support services. So we've been involved over the last decade or so looking at a number of different project opportunities around the world, and we can help developers identify sites and develop sites that are suitable for tidal energy. One thing that anybody who's been involved in marine energy can tell you is that there's no shortcuts to success. It's a long journey. Andrew is saying 15 years. For us, it's only been about a decade. And we've really been building up the capability just step by step in a very meticulous way, I suppose, to end up in a place where we're now able to deliver projects. And that's with our partners Shottle, who are now the largest shareholder in our company, and then Scottish Enterprise being the second largest shareholder in Sustainable Marine. And so we've had a lot of support from Scottish Government, but it's been a real pan-European effort. And to a point now we're exporting technology, and we're developing our first projects in Canada, where we've just brought our new vessel there, the Tidal Pioneer, to help construct our project, and we're actually developing some very unique, bespoke and sophisticated anchoring equipment here in Scotland to help deliver those projects in Canada. And it's really been a journey of, let's say, a little bit of trials and tribulation, trial and error, if you like. That is the case, but also studious science and engineering, and really proving up in the field is the key there. And so I suppose we were asked as a panel to think about how marine energy can contribute to the race to net zero here in the context of COP26. And I suppose, some people might say, okay, marine energy or tidal energy in particular, it's quite I suppose, so we would use the word niche. Well, yes, it is. It is geographically specific. But where it is an incredibly powerful resource. And a lot of the areas where you have tidal energy, you might not have such good solar insulation or such good wind resource. And so the question really needs to be asked, how can you harvest this resource to really help in the race to net zero? It's pretty obvious how we're going to get the first 50%, but how are we going to get the next 20% and the next 20% and the last 10%? Those are the hard yards, and that's where marine energy can really make a difference. And it can make a difference in several ways by being such a high density, predictable resource, and you can use energy vectors such as the electricity grid or hydrogen to deliver that to the ultimate end users. And we think that there's a lot of opportunity globally for that, and that the technology developed here in Scotland can really help the world achieve, I suppose, that net zero result in the end. Thank you.
And our fourth speaker, Cameron McNatt from Motion Energy.
Hi there, I'm Cameron McNatt with Motion Energy. I think I want to kind of start my talk by just telling you a little bit of a personal story about me, which I think, and the founding of Motion Energy, which I think is indicative of the kind of support that Scotland has created for the industry. So I'm, in case you couldn't tell, I'm American. My name is Cameron McNatt, which is kind of Scottish sounding. It's sort of, so I'm American with Scottish roots, and my background's in software and naval architecture, but I came to the University of Edinburgh to study wave energy. And I started my PhD in 2012, and I came to Scotland because of its incredible wave energy industry. So back then, there were companies called Polamis and Aquamarine, and it really looked like the wave energy industry was kind of taking off. And then in 2014, 2015, the industry really kind of took a dive, and that was when I was finishing my PhD. But the Scottish Government really continued to stay supportive of the industry and created Wave Energy Scotland, and that's what allowed myself and my co-founder Chris Retzler, who was actually the principal scientist at Polamis, to try again and to try something new and to start Motion Energy and to do something a little bit different with our technology. So, you know, what we've done that's a little bit different is start with software, and that was kind of from my background, and Chris is a very insightful and a brilliant scientist. And so we developed our own software platform where we could programmatically create geometries and run them through an optimization and essentially develop new designs focused on the geometry, the shape of the machine, so that it moved more in the waves, generating more energy. And that has been kind of the basis of our development through the WES program. But one thing we've learned over the past 5 years doing Motion Energy and doing the WES program is that it takes a lot more than a computer program to put something in the ocean. And for that, we've been so supported by the Scottish supply chain, our partner companies that have ultimately helped us engineer and design our first wave energy converter, Blue X, which is being tested at EMEC in the Scapaflow test site right now. And actually, incredibly, we're getting very close to finishing that program. We're going to decommission in 2 weeks, which will be, you know, it's sort of the end, but a new beginning as well. Another thing that we're trying to do differently is a commercial approach. And I think that we're seeing this a lot. You know, the tidal energy is really struggling with this get to the utility scale, the utility markets, and that's really hard. And I think we see tidal companies looking at sort of communities and things like that. And what we're doing as well is looking for the sort of offshore, off-grid markets. So we're starting with a product that we call Blue Star, which is a 20 kilowatt wave energy converter, which will be deployed far offshore, you know, hundreds of kilometers offshore in deep water, providing power and communication links to remote equipment. Some of this is in the oil and gas industry, which is a sort of a bit of a kind of a catch-22, but not all of it. So the oil and gas industry is really looking to decarbonize as well. And so some of the applications that we're looking at are carbon capture and sequestration projects, which are really exciting and have a potential to have a huge impact. And all of that is about a route to market. So the next products we're seeing are a 250 kilowatt wave energy converter, which would provide power to offshore platforms, power to offshore aquaculture, remote communities, island resorts. And again, the sort of value proposition there is about replacing diesel generation. But in the long run, we think that wave energy, like all of the marine renewables, is complementary. It's complementary to the entire renewable mix, but particularly within offshore wind. So when you look at the sort of future of offshore wind, these giant wind turbines, the rotor diameters are going to be about 150 meters, and the spacing between these turbines is going to be 1.5 to 2 kilometers. So there's a lot of space out there that's not being used by the wind farm, where we can fit wave energy converters and develop a project that provides more power, a higher capacity factor, and a more predictable supply of power to the grid. So very excited to be here. Thank you very much.
And our final introductory remarks coming from Simon Gray. Thank you, Simon.
Press a button. Good afternoon, everybody. And let's next see how we get on. So the great thing about going last is that everybody else has said everything. So all I really need to do is to introduce AWS, Ocean Energy, and I've got a short video on our technology, so that saves me speaking a bit. And I think I've got one more slide, and I can't even remember what it is, so I'll talk about it when I see it. And I'll move on. Well, maybe I'll just stay there for 2 seconds. I was just recalling that this week, 42 years ago, I started my first wave power job at the University of Edinburgh. So it's slightly things you just said to me the other day. I'm stark raving bonkers. I am, because I'm still in wave energy after all that time. But AWS has been around for, well, the Archimedes wave swing since about 1998, and it's been a long, long journey getting us to where we are. AWS Ocean Energy was set up in 2004 to commercialize that technology, but to have a wider focus on technology development for marine energy. As you see from the slide, and as people will know, we're one of the two wave energy technology developers who are supported by Wave Energy Scotland, and we're very grateful for that. We've been involved in things around the world, particularly the Wave Energy Prize in the United States. There were 92 entrants to that, and we came out third, which we were quite pleased with. And currently we are just in the final stages of commissioning a 16 kilowatt wave swing to go in the sea within the next couple of weeks. So that's really exciting for us. And the nice thing about our company, and despite that long history where we've had a significant amount of investment over the years, we've ended up through various strokes of fortune being owned by the company directors. So we are nimble, fleet of foot, and able to take decisions which can drive the company and the technology in the right direction. So next I'm just going to play a short video which just explains the technology. Hopefully it's interesting, particularly to people out on the web, and then we'll sum up with a few other things. So hopefully this will play. Another click. Nope. Back. There we are. Right.
The wave swing is a subsea pressure-actuated buoy tethered to the seabed. It works on a similar principle to the Cartesian diver toy. The device consists of a pair of structural components, the floater and the silo, which, together with a rolling seal, enclose a volume of air. Under a wave crest, the increasing hydrostatic pressure forces the floater downwards, compressing this air volume, which in turn acts as a spring to return the floater upwards. The floater's motion is constrained to 1 degree of freedom by a set of bearings. A hydraulic cylinder coupled to a hydraulic motor converts this reciprocating linear motion to rotary motion, which is then converted to electrical energy using a conventional generator. The device's performance can be tuned by adjusting the internal air volume. And a winch system enables tidal compensation and recovery to the surface. Smart control software enables performance to be finely tuned to the incoming sea state, maximizing power capture.
Click on before the bell. There's a nice piece of music developed, actually recorded by one of our engineers who used to work for AWS. So yeah, just recapping on some of the other things which the others have mentioned. What's driven our design? Well, we are submerged beneath the sea, which is different from all other wave energy converters. That gives us the ability to retreat from storms and to work in deep ocean conditions. A single point mooring means that we can get into congested sites where there's a lot of our own infrastructure around and where there are fishing interests and other things. Self-contained autonomous power, which means that we can go out and operate in deep ocean conditions for sort of applications that Cameron's been talking about. And developed all the time with a view to rapid deployment and recovery for maintenance. And we see a great future. We can scale up in the future. We can combine with offshore wind and others. And we're really looking forward to moving this all forward and to demonstrating the technology in the next weeks and months. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we've had a brilliant kind of overview of all the different technologies and a lot of the history. So I'm really keen to get an idea of perhaps what the next 5 years looks like, maybe the next 10 years, depends how far you want to move with the times. Andrew, can I come to you first? What's the next 5 years look like for you? You're kind of quite far down the track, aren't you? I mean, that's certainly the perception I have.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, as I said, the O2 we position as a commercial demonstrator. So the focus of the company really is to take the business to a commercial footing. So we want to grow commercial orders around turbines, which means we've got to bring projects online. And hopefully in the next 3-4 years, demonstrate an ability to deliver commercial projects and for commercial projects to deliver investor returns. That's what's required to grow investor confidence in this space. And once we've got those blueprints kind of mapped out, that's when the real hockey stick scaling effect starts to happen, and hopefully we can take this business to a really exciting place, not just here in the UK, but right around the globe where tidal streams can play a role. So that's what our aspiration is. We're at the start line of the commercialization process, not the technology process. We kind of feel we've gone through a lot of that development and demonstration, and what we really need right now is some leadership and vision around creating those early commercial steps for the industry to build out and gather investor confidence. I think what's clear to us is there is a huge amount of investor interest in this space. Yeah. You know, and there is on all sides, projects, technology, you know, and just on the growth equity, ESG side of things. But it does all need to be underpinned by an ability for people to make money. And that means we need to be afforded the same opportunity that every other technology, renewable technology that we have on the wires right now have had previously. So that's what we need.
Yeah, and it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because we all see it and trying to explain it to government, and they've seen it for themselves, and trying to get them to remember, you know, where onshore wind was and where offshore wind was and where floating perhaps has been as well is always a consistent challenge. But continue to keep on with that message. Graham, is it the same for you? What's your thinking for the next 5 years? Is it about growing the commercialisation case? Is there more to it from your perspective?
So I think Andrew's summed it up pretty well. From our perspective, we're very keen to see how the government comes out with AR4. We've had a snapshot of what we think is coming, which is not particularly helpful, I don't think, for the industry. We're hopeful that can be influenced and changed, which obviously the industry is trying to do. And I think that will set the tone, because the United Kingdom and Scotland specifically are world leaders in this technology, and we all want to commercialise it. I mean, from our company perspective, we've got one big project that most people know about called Maygen, and our ambition is to get that built out as a minimum at 86 megawatts, but ideally at sort of 400 plus. So that's our ambition, and our ambition will be also to collaborate with the rest of the industry to try and have other technologies there as well, to make sure that we can showcase on a global stage what Scotland and the United Kingdom can do when they put their mind to it.
Brilliant. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I suppose, part of the reason you have events like COP26 is because governments on their own maybe move a bit slowly at times. Unfortunately, UK government has not provided market support for wave and tidal energy over the last 5 years. So we actually have a fantastic project opportunity right now in Canada and a jurisdiction in Nova Scotia where there is a market support mechanism. So we have a fully funded project there where we're developing an array of devices, and that's really been slowed down a little bit, trying to work in other jurisdictions during the whole COVID pandemic. We're now ramping back up, as we sort of said, it's all in the thing, and we're ramping up there to get that project underway. But I suppose the challenge is, how do we sort of find other opportunities? I mean, clearly wave and tidal is not going to develop without some support for these early demonstration projects wherever they are in the world. It doesn't matter what jurisdiction it's in. Wave and tidal is not unlike any other energy technology. All energy technologies, whether it's oil and gas or it's nuclear or it's wind or solar, have all had a leg up in the beginning to get them going, and many still do. So we're very much, I suppose, working to look for where we think those opportunities are going to be, and very much hoping that some of them are going to be here in Scotland.
Yeah, me too. Cameron, in the wave space, what's the next 5 years looking like for you?
So I think similarly, we're fortunate to be on the kind of verge of commercialization as well. So we've had the prototype in the water being tested up in Orkney, and it's really performed pretty well. We see commercial opportunities where, to be honest, if we had a product ready to go, we would have a sort of commercial sale happening, which is really fantastic. And I think a lot of that's driven by the energy transition, but also sort of fundamentally by the energy transition within oil and gas, and these oil and gas companies needing to diversify and reduce their carbon emissions. So I think what we need to do now is just move very quickly in our product development, and so go from being a first of a kind prototype in the water to an actual commercial product that is reliable. And I think that's probably our biggest challenge now is convincing companies that the technology we have is reliable and will work robustly, because doing things offshore is very expensive, and they need things to work.
Yeah. Simon, you're director-owned, you said. Is that making a difference? What does that mean for your next 5 years? Is your route to commercialisation and your need to prove that the same? Or you've got believers amongst your...
Yes, it is essentially the same, and we face the same fundamental problem which everybody on the panel faces, which is a company only exists if you have a customer. You can only attract investment if you have a customer. And at the moment, apart from some customers which in spaces such as Cameron's identifying here, don't actually exist. They're not there. And until customers come and say, I want one of your machines, and the closing quote, which I didn't know was going to be on your film, or the film you showed just after your talk, which says, if you present a problem to engineers, we'll solve it. Tell us what you want and the price you're prepared to pay for it, and we'll solve it. We're standing ready with the wave swing, thinking, right, when we see customers who say, this is what we want, we can adapt it, we can change it, we can prove this, we can prove that. But that's the key step, that's the next thing. And following on Jason's point, you know, the first country that steps up with the tariff for wave energy, which makes wave energy affordable, will be the country which corners wave energy technology's next stage. And the British government needs to recognise that. We need to get that support in place. And with that support in place, with our customers telling us what they want, that will dictate what we do in the next 5 years.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll continue, hopefully, to work with WES. We'll continue to develop technology. We'll continue to work on the aspects which are the survivability, the maintainability. How do you actually practically put these things out in the ocean, operate and maintain them? And that builds the sort of evidence that Cameron's talking about, which commercial companies coming along and looking at a proposition will need to see.
Yeah. So we've got a few questions coming in on Slido. Please don't be shy, send us some more in as well. But I've got loads of my own. We've only got actually about 7 minutes left until coffee break. But one of the questions I'm really keen to ask you, because it was something that I did a bit of work on marine energy with The Economist intelligence unit, and they were looking into ocean energies of all sorts and looking for applications, exactly the point that you were just making, Simon, and you talked about this a little bit as well, Graham, around co-location. We've seen the fortunes of floating wind change very quickly with oil and gas becoming interested in it as part of their kind of decarbonisation process. I think perhaps you, Simon, had talked about an oil and gas linkage as well, or no, it was actually yourself, Cameron, in promotion. I discussed with the Economist Intelligence Unit things like shipping. I mean, are we thinking more broadly like that in terms of off-takers for things like wave and tidal? Where are these co-location opportunities that you're talking about? Are they broader than oil and gas, or are we still in oil and gas, Cameron?
Yeah, I think they're absolutely broader than oil and gas. I think there are a lot of opportunities. You know, I think the sort of zero carbon shipping is really going to be important, and you know, fine, you use hydrogen or you use electricity, but the source of that, use batteries, but the source of that electricity has to be green, or it's kind of meaningless. And so, you know, these ships are already in the sea. It makes sense to get the power out of there and have sort of recharging stations offshore and things like that. And I think that's all doable. And I definitely see that as kind of the next step. You know, other things like offshore aquaculture, same sort of thing where they're, you know, going to be using hundreds of kilowatts of power and they're already offshore. You know, there's an interesting niche, you know, particularly for wave in the kind of lower scale, you know, kilowatts to hundreds of kilowatts, where wind isn't a good fit. You know, floating wind turbines are megawatt scale, but I think there's a really good opportunity in this sort of smaller to medium scale power for wave at least.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think we've got to be really realistic about what scale we need for offshore and floating wind projects, and I think that was mentioned as well, wasn't it? Once you get beyond that, you're going to need to have more. Andrew, you've gone down the kind of innovative investment path, and I know that you'll probably be thinking about you know, PPAs perhaps and things like that. Where do you see potential partners for tidal?
So I think, you know, obviously the whole energy space is a massively dynamic space, and that's good because it generates a lot of opportunities and things. But I think, you know, we're not getting away from the aspiration to converge our levelized cost of energy with the wider mature space. And we've developed a technology that's at utility scale. You know, we believe there's a big market out there, you know, projects that could be in the gigawatt scale projects. I mean, it's not, so, you know, tidal stream energy will define its own kind of vision as to what it looks like globally. But there is a market for large-scale tidal projects to perform and operate in the same kind of conscript as big offshore wind and things like that. So that's what we're focused on, is the near-term conventional power market, large projects. We think that there's an aspiration, there's a desire for that if we can get the cost right, and ability to deploy a large amount of capital and a large amount of technology to do that.
Yeah. Simon, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just sort of listening to that and picking up on it and thinking that one of the things about wave is, as Cameron says, you can go from very small into a few tens or hundreds of kilowatts, and there are wave energy developers out there who are looking specifically at what scale things to power very remote applications. But equally, wave will scale, and the gigawatt scale projects are possible. One of the things that we have to do, though, is to set out and say this, rather than an organic growth of slowly going stepwise, a bit like wind happened. But remember, that took wind 30 years or so. If we want to get there, we want to make an impact to net zero. We need to be setting out our stall and saying, no, if we really want to build a gigawatt northwest of Lewis, these are the steps we've got to take, and we need serious capital behind it. We need serious investment by government, and it can be done.
Definitely.
And just in the way that North Sea was rolled out for oil and gas, this can be done, but there needs to be a political will to do it.
Yeah, and I do think we're in a very different space now. I agree with you that the sort of 30-year growth trajectory is hard, and it is one that we find difficult, for all sorts of reasons, from a supply chain development point of view, most especially. But I tend to agree. But I think the time is now. I think we have got a extreme focus, and net zero certainly gives us that impetus. I've now got loads of questions that have come in on Slido, so I'm going to have to fast track some of these. The first one that came in, though, which I'm really keen that we do tackle, because really important stakeholder. We've got Elspeth McDonald, who's SFF, obviously. What impact could wave and tidal have on commercial fisheries? We need marine renewables for net zero, but we also need fish, the climate smart food. You talked a lot, Simon, about the deployability of your device, which is, you said single point mooring, good for congested or deep sites, and you talked a little bit about fishing being able to continue around there. Can I come to you, and then I'll ask our one of our tidal developers to also comment on there, and we'll rattle through these.
Sure, I guess there's two bits. One is the aspect that Cameron mentioned of actually providing power to offshore agriculture. The other one is simply the acceptability of wave energy farms in fishing grounds, and the natural effect that putting infrastructure in the sea creates artificial reefs, improves habitat, and so fishing becomes more popular in these areas. And I first got onto this in a conference in Oregon, meeting crab fishermen who'd looked at all sorts of wave energy devices. They were there almost to protest against them, and they looked at us and said, oh, you can go on a single point mooring that's taut, we won't get our crab fishing gear wrapped around that, and they went away saying, oh, right, okay, we could accept wave energy. So I think there are some positives, but it's this application specific thing of what does the customer want, what does the environment, what does stakeholders accept, and it may be they want a Blue X or one of Motion's technology, it may be that it's a wave swing, it may be that it's something else that suits.
Yeah, absolutely. Graham, from a tidal perspective, what's your interaction been with fisheries, and how do you see the coexistence?
Of fish or fisheries?
Both. Both.
So I think the data is that we're not sort of harming the environment, whether that's marine mammals or fish. I think the challenge would be if you've got commercial fishing going on and you've got 200 turbines sat on the seabed, then that might be a challenge. So I think that they'd have to clearly avoid those areas. But from an environmental perspective, I don't think it's damaging at all.
I think probably just to say on the tidal side of things, there's generally not a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to a tidal stream site, they're so hostile, they're generally not commercially fished. So there isn't a huge amount of interaction or overlap from an actual take fisheries perspective, just because the sites are so hostile. Fishermen generally don't fish them.
Right. No, that's useful to know.
And maybe just something quickly, I mean, we're, of course, Nova Scotia, where we're operating at the moment, it's the largest export earner for Nova Scotia is seafood.
It's seafood.
But what we're finding is that we're actually able to keep quite a few fishermen employed in the off-season doing work for us. And in fact, we've used fishing boats in the fishing community to help us install our devices there. So.
Yeah, and that's it. So very much they work together, obviously, with the wind sector too, and it's that coexistence that we are needing to bring together and to work on. I've got a question too from Sarah Kelly. How do we bring the different companies together to solve the commercialisation problem with marine energy rather than tackling it individually? I think this is a pretty key point, actually. It's one that I wrote down before we'd even started, is that I worry that marine energy has maybe got the bug from the rest of the renewable sector, which is that it's always gone through this very intense period of competition rather than collaboration, and we need to foster that. What's you're thinking? You're going to give me something? Cause
Yeah, I was going to say I think there's a lot of collaboration in the sector.
Okay.
I mean, I mentioned our anchors. We are working with other developers of both wave and tidal energy devices to secure their devices to the seabed from technology that we developed as part of our journey. We're also working with supply chain partners in Orkney and other places, that are growing through their experiences working with all of us, that we're now exporting those skills, working with them into other jurisdictions. There's a huge amount of collaboration. I think that actually it's just a case of actually selective hearing, that it's one of those easy point to, yes, it's diverse technology, but actually the core skills and the core expertise that's being developed is very much a team effort, especially here in Scotland and especially I would say in the Orkney Islands, and it's just the fact is we're not providing feed-in tariffs and market support mechanisms have gone out of vogue, and that's really the problem, is that I suppose we were too late in some ways as a marine energy sector to ride that mid-noughties wave, which was providing solar projects with over 500 euros a megawatt hour. And so to get their feet under the table, but if we want the next tranche of technologies to be brought forward, guess what? It's going to happen again.
Andrew, is it possible to collaborate on commercialisation? Is it too difficult for you right now, or?
I think it's all a little bit moot. It needs to be forced through the harsh filter of commercial investment. Commercial sector needs to come and get its teeth in and direct where collaboration will give the best bang for buck. Yes, there's lots of collaboration that can get done, but it needs to get done on the right projects and the right solutions, and it's commercial mechanisms that will drive that.
Okay. I've got one more question. I'm just looking. Can I go with this one, because I think it's a good one, and I'll probably direct it to you, Graham. It says, is there a backup plan for the tidal developers if they don't get a CFD at AR4? Does the IPPA or carbon tax market have any place or any traction for you?
I'm probably not the right person to answer that one.
No? Okay. Andrew?
Well, the funny answer would be, have you seen our technology? We're going to space, but no. I think I've been involved in this space for a long, long time, and I kind of like to think that it's no longer a question of if it's going to happen, and I actually kind of think that it's maybe no longer really a when it's going to happen for the tidal space. Is that I think we've got empirical evidence and demonstration of technologies that can work in a commercial model. So I think the final question really is, where is it going to happen? So, that's the big push that we have at this stage is, we think there's a lot to be gained for the UK to maintain its leadership, because we've got the right industries, we've got a lot of the right heritage, and we've got a lot of the right resource. But, if that's not forthcoming, investors will look to make returns and make investments elsewhere. And, as Jason can demonstrate, there is appetite in other regions around the world to exploit that. So, to my mind, the final question is really where.
Cameron, really quickly on that point, do you see CFD as where you're aiming at, or do you think you might start to see the IPPA market or regular PPA market?
Yeah, I think maybe something like an IPPA would be more appropriate for us in the near term. I mean, we would love to develop commercial projects here within the UK. I think, we're really supportive in terms of the kind of industry collaboration. We want to see that CFD happen because we want to see success within the tidal industry. Yeah. I mean, but right now I would say we're not ready for it, and be a mistake for there to be something carved out just specifically for wave. But I think we should all focus on sort of being cheerleaders for each other. Wave and tidal industries, as well as within companies. Like success for any individual company is a success for the industry.
Creates a slipstream, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to wrap up there. That has literally been the quickest hour of my entire life. So I'm going to try and pull some of this together. We talked a little bit to begin with about the next 5 years, about growing the commercials, looking at leadership and vision. We've got investor interest and we need to sort of build on that. And then building out at scale, and so a really exciting prospect of gigawatt scale wave, which has been talked about here. Thinking too about that co-location with our other technologies. I think that's also a really, really interesting theme that we've explored. But we keep coming back to that same issue of, and it was said here, the first country to provide a decent tariff will be the one that wins this race. So it's very much a case of who is going to want to take this prize. And I very much hope that both the UK and Scottish governments are listening to that particular conversation. Difficulties with AR4, but we still do keep coming back to the strong performance of the sector. We're now seeing that come in, day in, day out, really strong kind of power performances, and a global reach. Each and every one of you have talked about work in other countries, but local impact. And I think that's always where we come back to with something like Wave and Tidal, is that it's got, really strong affection amongst the communities and places where it is evolving and where it is working, but also that huge potential to reach out across